I am once again having grandparents in the house, and the child is once again refusing their care. It's a little better this time, but it is still quite arduous. He doesn't just want to be held by me. He wants to be reassured that these people aren't going to steal him. So he's like extra clingy.
How are you feeling about that? Are you frustrated?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a delight to be so loved, but it is annoying to have this little barnacle.
I'm Chris Aaron Canary.
And I'm Kelton Wright.
Follow our quest to publish our first novels
From first drafts to query letters,
through inevitable rejections,
and hopefully eventual success.
from California
to Colorado. This is Pen Pals. But he allowed me some work. How are you this week?
I'm okay. I got some work done. Last week, my goals were to wake up at 5, map out the end of my book, and read some stuff on structure. And I feel like I did that for the most part. I didn't wake up at 5 on Monday because it was a holiday, so I allowed myself an extra day of sleep. But what I did do, which I found very helpful, was I opened an Excel spreadsheet, which working in digital marketing, I'm very comfortable in spreadsheets. And I basically wrote out every scene and flashback in my book, and I put them where they are in chapter form. And then all the scenes that I had in my head that I wanted to write out, I put them at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I was writing them, structuring them into the different cells and the different rows so that I could see where everything was. And it really helped and actually took some of the pressure off of me having this complete picture of my book. It allowed me to kind of think about things in movable pieces, which was really nice. And also gave me something to think about in terms of what I was going to write next without feeling this need to have it connect perfectly. So
Yeah.
it allowed me to have a little bit more freedom and actually wrote those scenes. I wrote quite a few of them this week. So I did get some writing done and I did wake up at 5. It was hard. I think I got to my desk by 5:30 after snoozing for a little bit, but I did that and I did read some stuff on structure. I went back to some of the things that I had from the class that I took last fall around structure and I read those and we had a presentation in the class that I'm currently taking from an author named Kim Cross who talked about structure. So I had some tangible lecture material that I could read from. So it helped. And I think the biggest thing that I needed was just to take pressure off of myself. There is this just feeling, especially since we're meeting and talking about it every week.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good thing. I think it's a forcing function for me, but it also feels like I have to, every time I sit here in front of a microphone with you, have a really clear, like, this is what I did and I figured this out. But having this spreadsheet helped me kind of just take the pressure off a little bit and feel like I'm writing the pieces without putting the Lego set together quite yet. So I felt good about it.
It must be nice to step back from the writing itself while you're doing that, to be in this spreadsheet than in the novel file and just see them as these separate units and where you don't have to see like the few sentences where these scenes are supposed to meld together. Because then obviously you're like, but this turn of phrase, I'm not going to be able to use it.
I had a flash of Kelton in my head because I was spending so much time in the spreadsheet that I was like, oh, I'm getting distracted by this. I'm actually not writing because I'm spending so much time trying to like move things around. And I was looking at things I'd already written because I have scenes and I have flashbacks and I have these interludes that are told from a different POV that are meant to be pieces of another written text. And I was like, oh, but like there should be a rhythm to it. And like, I started thinking, I was like, no, I can't do that. I got to forget about that for now and just keep moving forward and not get distracted by the pre-work and actually keep writing. So I thought about
I love
you.
it. Well, I'm glad I could be of service. No, that sounds really helpful. And I look forward to creating a similar spreadsheet.
Well, what writing did you get done this week? Your goal was 3 hours and 1,500 words. And I had proposed that you get out of the house.
I did not get out of the house. I made everyone else get out of the house.
Okay, fair
because I didn't wanna waste time commuting. I was like, "All of you leave. The husband, the baby, the grandparents, get out." And that was effective, and I did all 3 hours. I did everything that I said, and I still found the week somewhat unsatisfactory. Just as the week overall felt like a very frenetic week of constantly handling things and people and moving parts. And I found that agitating. But I did land on like one, how would I describe it? Like a working element of my novel, something that I could tell an agent that, like, this is an interesting thing that this novel does. And so that was really fun to kind of organically come upon just through one of the scenes that I was writing. And so I found that very satisfying.
I'm struck by how you achieved all of your goals and you still somehow seem unsatisfied.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it doesn't scratch the itch. I'm glad I achieved them, obviously. I'm happy about that, but I am like I need to have more momentum. And maybe this is the beginning week of momentum for me. Maybe I can look at this as like the first couple shoves of the boulder, but yeah, I'm starting to like smell the like a spring in the air, and I feel the need to be further along.
Mm, mm.
You know? It's like you can, like, smell the, like, essence of petrichor. These trees are making buds deep down in their branches, and you're like, "What am I making?"
Oh, okay. Well, if we're going to apply the wheel of life,
Don't gentle parent me.
this is not gentle parenting. This is something I learned from the School of the Sacred Wild. Spring is a coming to life, it is an awakening, right? So if you are giving nature the opportunity to wake up, just think about your own productivity coming out of a winter in a slow slumber, and you're kind of moving your fingers for the first time, opening your eyes for the first time. It takes a minute to adjust to the new light.
Have you seen the movie Double Jeopardy?
No.
Oh, well, it's one of my favorites, but there is a scene in that movie where Ashley Judd wakes up inside a coffin and
Oh, wait, I have seen that movie.
yeah, and she just panic bashes her way out of it with, like, a lighter and, like, just clawing her way out. That's what I'm like in the springtime. That's me accomplishing my goals.
All right. Well, I love it. Well, this week we're going to talk about community and platforms, right? I sent Kelton this clip on Instagram that was about Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke's daughter, and she was in production of a movie or she was trying to raise funds. She wanted to delete her Instagram. And they basically told her, when we are looking to fund a film, we look at the collective following of all the people involved in the film. And if you delete your Instagram, all of your followers I have to remove from that following, and it's going to make it less likely for us to fund this film. And I sent it to Kelton. Her response was just, we're fucked.
Yeah, we are fucked.
We are fucked. I mean, me more so than Kelton, because Kelton has like 50,000 followers on Instagram and my Instagram's private. But it does beg the question about networks and platforms and having a following, and how important it is for a writer to have that in order for them to get their book published.
Yeah, and to have a loyal following. I think there are some falsehoods that social media platforms can give us about writers and how connected they are. 50,000 followers does not mean 50,000 people are gonna pre-order your book. And in my case, most of those 50,000 followers don't even know me or remember that they follow me. I do have to tell a quick story about why I have so many Instagram followers. And I think this is like something healthy to keep in mind when you're comparing yourself to the hordes of popular people on the internet. I had a great Instagram account once upon a time, and then we got snowed in. And I made a video of me opening the door to a wall of snow and then like lifting my dog so he could look out over the top of the snow wall to see over the mountains. And that video had great engagement the first day. I think it got like 10,000 views. And I was like, whoa, crazy. And then the next day it had 100,000 views. And then over the next 2 weeks, it got 125 million views. I got 6 million likes. It was reposted everywhere. And I took advantage of that. I was getting thousands and thousands of followers. I was making all these funny videos. And then I was watching my analytics and it's just going up and up and up and up. And then one day I looked at my analytics and it was just a cliff wall in my analytics right down to zero. Zero engagement on anything I posted. And I had 63,000 followers. And so I was like, brought to Instagram, as one does. And obviously, they don't write back as they do. And what ended up happening after I asked a bunch of people in the industry is that I got shadow banned because the activity on my account was so fast and so propulsive that it was considered suspicious. And so basically, the algorithm that had skyrocketed me was also what shut my account down. And I have never been able to get back to normal Instagram. So like yesterday I posted a bunch of photos of my flock of cats and dogs, and out of all 50,000 people who follow me, I like 100 liked it. So I'm still in algorithm jail and I've tried all the tricks to get out of it and I can't I can't break free. Every once in a while I'll like find a way to work the algorithm that I'll get like 500 likes. But having 50,000 followers hasn't done anything. So just something to keep in mind. It's better to have a small, engaged, loyal following than it is to have a large, bogus one that doesn't care about you.
Yeah, and I will say, just because my day job is in digital marketing and working with influencers, that when we are looking to have partnership with an influencer, we look at engagement rate as a metric for
Mhm.
whether or not we want to work with that person, because they can have millions of followers. And there were situations where we worked with celebrities and influencers that had millions of followers, and we spent tens of thousands of dollars for content, and it did nothing for the business. And that was because a lot of the followers were bots
Mhm.
and or not in the country. And so now we've changed our strategy, and a lot of people who work with influencers have changed their strategy to understand what the engagement metrics are as a measure of how engaged the audience is. So I think, to your point, it is important that the audience that you're building is one that is engaged with you as is a personal brand, I guess you could say. But a lot of people are still looking at followers. And I was thinking about it. I was trying to put my hat of someone who works in this industry and think about it from the publisher's perspective. And I don't know how I should have looked it up ahead of the of our conversation, how much it costs to publish a book, how much investment publishers typically spend to promote a book. There are book publicists that, even as an individual author, you can hire to help you promote your book. But having an audience does give you some way to talk about the fact that you have a book coming out.
Mhm.
And I don't know about you, but I do follow some authors that I like on social media and have discovered authors through TikTok that create content there. Saba Tahir, for example, does a really good job of keeping people updated on what she's publishing and the events that she's going to. And she has a community on Instagram that she posts regularly to and gives updates about her book. And I think she seems to be an older millennial and feel comfortable being present online. And I think that in order to build an engaged audience, you have to be somewhat native and somewhat fluent and have a feel for how to talk to people online. And for awkward people like me, I cannot post a selfie. I hate it. I'm so self conscious. I don't know if I can build a platform that way. So I am nervous about going out into the world. In all of the querying that I did, nobody asked me how many influencer followers I had. They asked me about my writing resume and if I had a website, but they didn't say, what is your collective following across all social networks? But I can assume that that's not far off. I'm waiting for that field to appear in Query Tracker.
I think now that it's sort of like you only put your GPA on your resume if it was good. You know, it's like if you have 70,000 followers, you put that in your query letter just as like, by the way, And I also want to shout out the fact that like you don't need to be a selfie taking like Instagram dancer to build a following on the internet. There are quieter, subtler ways to build an audience. And I mean, one of those is obviously through newsletters. One of the authors I subscribe to on Substack, Kate Landers, she wrote The Year of Less. She's working on a new book now. And with her subscribers, she sent out a newsletter recently that shared her development of the color palette for the book. And we don't even know what the book is about. I have no idea what this next book of hers has anything to do with. But she was describing her thoughts behind building a color theory around it. And I've seen people do similar things with like, this is the playlist I'm building as I write this book, like ways to like draw people into what you're creating. This is another way to do it. Obviously, our podcast, we're talking about our books at length without even saying the premises of them. So there are ways to get people interested in your writing without even sharing any of it or any of yourself. I am using Substack personally as my new like platform that I would include in a query letter. So I don't know that I would say how many followers I have on Instagram because of the way I feel about those followers, but my subscribers to the newsletter are engaged and are engaged exactly in the writing, not just in pretty photos of a log cabin. So that there is a way that is subtle and quiet to do it.
Newsletters are definitely one way. I was doing a little bit of research before our conversation around writers that built platforms before they were able to publish. And I found out that Andy Weir, the author of The Martian, actually published and serialized his book on a blog and got noticed that way. Apparently, R.F. Kuang built a big following on Twitter and was able to have conversations around the themes of the Poppy War, Chinese history, and military history before publishing that book. So there are quieter ways. I don't go on Twitter. I haven't been on
Yeah.
Twitter in a long time, but definitely not anymore. But there are ways to do it. And I think blogs and online communities are a path into that. I guess the two authors that make up Christina Lauren also met in like a romance writers forum. A lot of authors did fan fiction, wrote fan
Mhm.
fiction, or Twilight fan fiction, and other. Oh, Allie Hazelwood's first novel was a fanfic. A lot of writers. There was another novel that I read that was also had started as fan fiction. So
What's interesting about that is that's like normal in screenwriting. To do a spec script is like your
mhm.
way to get into a writer's room. And so you start in that field oftentimes using existing characters and existing like story structures to just be like, this is how I would write those characters. And so it's really a good thing in that community. And I don't know why in traditional publishing it still feels kind of like, oh, you started with fanfic, you know? It's like you just did a spec script that was really, really long.
Really, really long, and was hyper fixated on shipping two characters that
Should kiss. God damn it.
I think that finding ways to write in general, we talked about that before. It's just practice. It's just practice. And these are definitely places where you can find your tribe and find your people. Have you ever participated in NaNoWriMo?
I have tried. So if you're not familiar, NaMoWriMo is a November writing. It's not what would you call it? It's not a competition. It's like a rallying cry for writers, encouraging them to write 50,000 words.
50,000 words in a month. You're supposed to write every single day for the entire month of November. And I have a friend who does it every year. I should
Nice.
ask her how it's going.
And completes it?
I think so. I should ask her
Holy.
how many books she's actually completed or how many drafts she's completed because she posts about it every November on Facebook and I've known her since high school. She used
That's
to help me sneak
incredible.
out of my house and we'd go to Rocky Horror Picture Show in Long Beach in the middle of the night and eat milkshakes at Denny's until I got caught and grounded. But yeah, I honestly I think there are places to find community online.
Yeah, NaMoWriMo does a good job of kind of bringing people together so you can talk about your premise and you can talk about what's getting in your way and how you're making it happen. People are very encouraging to one another. A similar structured group writing experiment is Jamie Attenberg's Thousand Words of Summer. She has a book about it too. But that similarly, it's like 1,000 words a day for a set time period. So there's all kinds of these online challenges you can find, and the people running them are hosting community around it. But you do have to be kind of annoying to build community on it. Like you got to be in there asking people things and talking to them, sharing ideas. You can't just be like, okay, I'm doing it. Where are my pals? On top of doing the writing, you also have to do the group. So I always find that part really challenging. I'm not naturally that good at being super engaged and extroverted in that way. My extroversion comes in chunks and then I swallow myself whole into the ground for like a week at a time. And so you got to go into it knowing, like, okay, I am going to comment on 5 people's posts. I'm going to follow up with people that I think are interesting and just be willing to embarrass yourself a little.
That's exactly what I was going to say. There is this element of self promotion that you have to engage in as a writer that feels a little icky. But when you're trying to build a community, the nice thing about it is that everyone is trying to do the same thing.
Hmm.
And a lot of the times, whenever I've reached out to someone, I've emailed authors whose books I really enjoyed. It feels a little weird and a little fangirly and a little icky. But actually, on the other side of it, like when we got our first email from this podcast, it made me feel so good to know that someone wanted to talk to us and I was interested in what we were talking about. And every time I put myself out there, whether it was in a class or online, I reaped the rewards of it because people are seeking community. Writing is such a lonely endeavor. And when you can connect with someone else who understands the struggles that you are engaging in and is right there with you, not only are they so happy to receive any type of word from somebody, but they're so generous with their encouragement and what they give back
Hmm.
as well. I've been taking these classes online, which is the first time I've engaged in writers' workshops that weren't in person. I had to kind of go out of my way to, in the Zoom classroom, send private messages to people to be like, hey, what do you think about what's happening right now? Or just trying to form a connection in ways that feel very different than how we would conduct ourselves outside of the writing community, right?
Hmm.
Or like cold email someone that wasn't a writer about something completely different, they're not going to respond. Or if you were to like DM someone online about something completely outside of writing, they're probably going to think you're crazy. But when you do it within a writing community with people that are kind of all trying to do the same thing, it's this weird permission to be awkward and to embarrass yourself a little bit. It's like being on the school grounds the first day of school at a new place. Like you got to go up to people and ask if they want to play with you.
Totally. And I do something sort of funny. I do this outside of writing. And I think the most frequent place I do this is architecture. I love architecture. It has nothing to do with my life. I'd never studied it. I'd never pursued it. I'm not interested in having a path in it. I just find it fascinating. And I have lived in enough places to see a lot of interesting houses, and I will look them up online by the address to find the person who owns it, to find the person who designed it, to find the architect of the house, and then I will write to the architecture firm to thank them for building something interesting. I do this anytime I find a house I think is really cool because I feel like so many houses are so boring. And so when someone is getting to do the work of like making something beautiful in the landscape, I'm like, that was awesome. Thank you. And so I write to those places and for me, it's no stakes. I get nothing out of it. I'm never hiring an architect. That is not the lifestyle that I live. And so there's no expectation. There's no desire for a relationship. It's just me being like, hey, I saw your art and I thought it was great. And so I like to practice that gratitude on people that I'm not hoping to build a relationship, hoping to learn from, hoping to be friends with. Because I feel the stakes in writing. I know everyone wants to be in community, but also some people don't. Some people get so many of those emails that they don't reply. And I know that, there are times when my ego can be sensitive enough to be like, oh God, I embarrassed myself. I'm a fool. I should have never said anything. But putting myself out there in context where it like truly doesn't affect my career at all, I find really satisfying to just say thanks to people who make beautiful stuff. I mean, you can do that with like good restaurants. You can do it with music, like go wild. People love it. People love a compliment.
People love a compliment. I emailed an author named Amy Berry, and she lives in Australia. She wrote this really cute series, the McBride Brothers series, and then I read all of her other books, and she's a fantastic writer, and I love stories told in the Old West anyway because I grew up in the desert, so I have an affinity for those stories. And my mom and I just consumed all of her books. And so I wrote her an email and I said, I love your books. I'm really hoping this one character gets her own book. And she wrote me back and she was so nice and thankful for the note. And I feel like spreading gratitude always pays back in dividends, even if you don't ever hear from that person and they may or may not read your email. I think it's a good idea. I do feel like it's kind of like learning a new language when you're trying to break into writing communities and find your way. You kind of have to not be afraid of sounding dumb a little bit. Otherwise, you're never going to be fluent.
Yeah, or no one's ever gonna know who you are. I mean, there is the side of this where it's like trying to have relationships with people is putting your name out there. In many ways, it is like trying to get a job. We are trying to get the job of novelists. And when you're trying to get any kind of job, you're emailing companies and you're emailing people asking if you can have introductory calls with them, if you can learn how they did it. That is part of it. Humans know that. And if you are afraid to send these emails because you're like, it feels kind of icky. Uh, I'm trying to think of a good analogy for it. And all I could think of was like, pots and pans are kind of icky after dinner, but like, it doesn't stop us from cooking on them. Like, just get out there and make something.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained. The way that I look at it, what's at the back of every book that you read?
The acknowledgments.
And how many names are in those acknowledgments? Probably like
Lots.
30 to 40.
Hmm.
I always think that when I'm reading through those, and I always read the acknowledgments because I'm always interested in who's this writer's agent, who who is their editor, where did they study, who are their
Hmm.
mentors, and there are literally no fewer than probably 20 names in those acknowledgments. It takes a village to raise a novelist. It takes so many people. You have the cheerleaders in your corner. You have your first readers. Kelton, you read my book. I had a girl that I went to college with that studied neuroscience read my book because I was like, does the science in this book make sense or do I sound really dumb? Her name's going in my acknowledgments. If you are writing a book, you need a lot of help. No one writes a book in a shed in the middle of the desert. Maybe they do, but they don't get it published that way?
Yeah, you need to get out of the shed to get it published. You might write it there, but it's not hitting shelves from there.
Get out of the shed.
Yeah, and I think in terms of building a platform, I should talk a little bit about it because I've done it twice now, 3 times. I built a Tumblr following in 2010, and then I built my Instagram following in 2015, and then Substack in 2021. So different platforms, different types of audiences. And the key I have found, the keys to building on any platform are consistency and community. You have to be consistent both in your publishing schedule and what people can expect of you. And then you have to engage with the community. You can be writing something incredible. And if you don't engage with anyone, no one's going to find it. Maybe you're the one lucky duck, but don't count on ever being the lucky one. Like count on the hard work working because it can, but it requires consistency. And that's what I've done on all 3 platforms is like, this is the thing I'm writing about. This is who I am as a person. This is when you're going to see it. And then from there, you go out and you read other people's stuff and you share their stuff and you comment on their platform. You use your platform to lift them up. Now, typically when you're doing that, obviously the dream is like, I'm going to have 500 subscribers and I'm going to reach out to Ann Patchett to interview her and she's going to say yes. And then she's going to share the interview on her platform to millions of people. And then all those millions will immediately subscribe to me. And it's like, nope, doesn't work that way. Like you want to be helping your peers because your peers are who you're going to be working with the most in that community as time goes on, as you build your platform, as you build your career. And so it's like, pull them up with you. And so I try to come up with ways. I'm launching a new series on my newsletter soon that does feature other people. And like the nice thing is that, like, one, it alleviates some of the work I have to do on my end because they're doing some of the writing. And then two, most of those people will share that on their own platforms and drive back to mine. And we create this little circle where we're just sharing each other and we're spinning and spinning and spinning until we're all just flung up high into the atmosphere of success. And I think the hard part about that is that it takes so long. And there are so many times when you're going to put out work that doesn't feel like it moves the needle at all. And it's like, every time you nail a board together, like, it's not a house for a while. You're like, I'm out here nailing by myself every day, just another nail in a board. And, every once in a while, you're like, oh my God, look, there's a wall. I built a wall. Holy shit. But it's like, it is slow going in between those. And that is where a lot of people drop off on the consistency because it doesn't have the validation. It doesn't have that reward system baked into it. So that I would just say is the only thing I can recommend is, like, bake in your own validation.
Bake it in. How do you bake in your own validation, Kelton? How do you do that?
That's hard. I think you've got to love what you're writing. I think as soon as you start writing in a way where you're like, oh, this is going to go viral, then you're entering some murky waters. You cannot see your feet in those waters. And I don't recommend that because that you can, like, feel when those things are sticky and false. There's this huge trend on Substack Notes right now, where it kind of feels like LinkedIn, where everyone is like growth hacking notes. It's like 5 ways to make sure your next note goes viral. And Substack is a snobby enough community that they're like, get this dreck off of my feed. But it has been working for some people. And you're like, I can tell what you're doing. I know that this is written in a way to, like, get me to share it instead of you just being like, this is the interesting thing I'm thinking about. And maybe there is some element of having to share, but if you're baking it on your own, then you're doing it because you love it. And you're reaching out to people because you genuinely find their work interesting, not because they have a big platform. And you're building relationships with people that you want to have a friendship with, not a transaction with. I don't know. That it's tough to tell people that because, everyone wants to succeed and you're like, how do I find these people I want to be friends with? And it takes so much time. Like, I would say I'm at 3.5 years of writing on Substack. And I would say just in the last 6 months did I really find people on that platform that I was like, wow, I feel like I have some friends here. I feel like I have community on this platform. And it took a while.
Yeah. It just goes back to what we were saying. I think it was in the first episode when we were talking about the joy of writing and not doing things for validation. But the fact is that even outside of building community, the writing that you're doing, all of the work that you're putting into becoming a writer, it takes so long. You really have to want it, and it has to be integral to your identity and the thing that makes you who you are and brings you joy, because if you were to quit and stop doing it tomorrow and walk away from it and not feel like you've lost anything, then maybe you're in it for the wrong reasons, right? I don't know about you, but for me, I definitely feel different when I'm not writing. When I'm letting the world get in the way of the writing that I know that I'm supposed to be doing, I think, I get depressed.
Hmm.
So I do think that thinking about building community is just part of your writing journey, I think is the way that you have to think about it, and
Yeah.
find other people to commune with and struggle alongside.
And I think you and I have shown that you can take 2 different avenues. I have taken a very public avenue to do that. I am out there kind of waving my flag on the internet every day, just being like, who wants to know me? Who wants to be pals? And you are taking classes and going to workshops and building relationships that way. So it can be done either way, like the platform versus network. I think both have their use cases. Obviously, the platform, as we mentioned, it's like you can list your followers and your places in your query letter, but you can also, there's ways to do that with a network as well. Be like, I was hanging out with this author and she pointed me toward this YouTube series that you host. And I was really enamored with the way you talked about so and so. And like, you can be of the community and talk about that because it helps too if you are a writer to have other author friends who are like, write your blurb to announce you on their social feeds because you're a pal of theirs. So there's benefits to both type of networks.
I think that the takeaway is that you either way you need one. Either
Yeah,
way, you need friends.
have you read the book Rufy Thorpe's Margot's Got Money Troubles?
I have.
One of the core tenets, and I highly recommend that book. I love that book. I also love Rufy Thorpe, is the idea that to succeed, you kind of need buddies. You need buddies to lift you up. And I think that is true in most craft and other fields. It's like if you're making something that's hard to get out in the world, then you need a pal or two.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Frodo did not make that journey on his own. It's the hero journey. You have to have the pals alongside you who help you take the hard knocks of life and give you perspective and point you back in the right direction when you want to go down the wrong path. It's really helpful to have someone, especially other writers, be able to give you words of encouragement or just tell you to wake the fuck up, get out of your own way, get out of the house or kick everyone out of the house so you can get some writing done. It's just, it's almost like having those people in your life remind you to give yourself permission to keep doing this thing because it's very easy to convince yourself to stop. It is, think about when you're running, like your whole body's like, stop running, stop. At least when I'm running, everything hurts. Stop running. It'll be so nice when you stop running. Why don't you just stop right now? You can just sit down on the pavement and die.
Running is really your sport, Chris Aaron.
Listen, I ran a lot during the pandemic and I really loved it. I have terrible feet and I was a track athlete in high school and college, but I ran really fast for a very short amount of time. And so distance running was always a struggle for me. I know people love it. I have a friend who's training for a marathon and she actually she has a Substack. She wrote about how she stopped listening to music while she was running. And
Mm.
I cannot think of a bigger nightmare than being alone with my thoughts while my body is screaming at me for any length of time. It is something that I think requires a lot of mental fortitude. And there is a reason why people use the metaphor that writing a novel is like running a marathon, because it is painful, but also so rewarding at the end.
Yeah. And I think, if we're talking about different race distances, we should talk about the fact that there are different platforms and you should think about which one you want to dedicate your time to. If making TikToks feels like a nightmare, it's not your platform. Like, you don't waste all of your creative energy on something that is going to be torturous and not work. There are reasons some people succeed on long form newsletters and some people succeed with short form on Blue Sky or whatever Twitter is called that day. And there are places in the middle that you can succeed. So try your platforms out. Go into them without expecting success. Go into them being like, do I like doing this? Because it is another type of art that you are making. And if you don't like making that art, you shouldn't be making it, regardless of whether you need a platform. Have a website, have a presence, but don't pour your all into it if you're just pouring it into a bucket with holes.
Do you think there's still a world in which I used to read a lot of author blogs back in the day, and it really felt like an intimate place to get to know an author and understand where they're coming from. And they're not these super long form things, but are people still reading blogs?
Have you read a newsletter?
I read your newsletter twice a week.
Listen, there's a reason Substack is so successful, and it's because the youth yearn for blogs. I think that people are never going to get tired of reading the intimate details of someone else's life. We love that shit. We have always loved that shit. We will continue to love that shit because we're humans and we're gossipy, curious, lonely, sad little creatures that are like, are you as weird as I am? And like when you find someone who shares your weird, you're like, whoo, whoo, whoo. Like, I was getting a little worried for a second there. Human curiosity will continue to win no matter what platforms are available to us. So find the one that works for you or go the back route and start taking classes and start saying hi. Start asking people to play with you. Because at the end of the day, the query letter, it's going to help if you have connections or a platform.
Definitely. When I was writing my query letter, I wrote all of the teachers that I studied with, all of the classes that I took, all of the workshops that I attended, and who mentored me in those workshops. And having those names of authors, it's like having equity. It's like putting money in the bank because they understand that you are a serious writer, that you have studied, that you have a network of some sort. Having any type of following, any type of number that you can put behind your name, I definitely think is going to make people more likely to take a chance on you when they're considering your book. I'm actually going to be attending AWP this year because it's in Los Angeles. So I
Tell
felt
tell the
so.
people about AWP.
So AWP stands for the Association of Writers in Writing Programs. They have a conference and book fair every year and it moves around the country. And I think last year it was in Kansas City, Missouri. And this year it's in Los Angeles. And I've always wanted to go. It is a multiple day conference that has lots of panel discussions. They also have a big book fair that occurs on the floor that is attended by publishers and agents and authors. So you get an opportunity if you want to go up and ask people to play with you in real life, I guess. So I'm already like feeling the anxiety of figuring out how I'm going to navigate this event, but there's so many good panels and so many good panels for people who are trying to break into publishing. There is a panel on networks and platforms, which I will attend. There's panels on self publishing, on querying, and then there's a lot of panels on subject matter that I find interesting. There's one on the Filipino diaspora that I'm really excited to go and attend. So I will come back and share what I've learned from that event, but it will be interesting to see and hear from agents how they feel about platforms and what they're looking for and if they consider it at all. And I will report back what I learned.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I wish I was going.
Come to LA. You can stay at my house.
I mean, I would love to. I would love to. I could get up at 5 a.m. with you every day.
I'll make you a cup of tea, non-caffeinated tea.
You're a dream. All right. I think that we should talk about what our goals are for next week.
Yes.
All right, Chris Aaron. I think I can tell you what my goals for this next week are. I still have my novel class for which I have to share a scene. And so I have to choose my scene soon. I have this inclination to choose a good scene, but I'm like, nah, babe, choose one that needs help. Like, be vulnerable. Put yourself out there with these people. So I got to choose my scene. And I would like to up the ante and do 4 hours this week. And I would like to put the scenes I have, similar to how you did on a spreadsheet, I want to get them up on Post-it notes on the wall. So that is my goal is 4 hours. I'm not doing a word count this week. I'm going to follow in the tradition of Chris Aaron and see if this loosens some things up since I kind of know the scenes I want to write. So I'm not that concerned about actually getting writing going. And then I want to get I want to get all my scenes separated onto Post-it notes and on a wall so that I can move them around and see where that feels like there's a gap forming.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't do Post-its or note cards because I feel like I'm going to lose them. So I put it in a spreadsheet, but it's effectively the same thing. It's a digital postcard of sorts. So I have a question for you.
Mm.
Have you made friends with anyone in the class that you're taking?
No, and let me pick your brain about this because the person hosting this class has not set up any functionality for us to know one another. We are
Oh,
BCC'd on the email. There isn't like a Slack group. There's no forum. And so I was talking to Ben about this. I was like, I want to know some of these people. I like some of these people. Should I email the host of the class and ask if we could start like a thread for the participants? Just because the problem is there's only 2 classes left. It feels like it's too small, too short, too late to be like, let's form relationships. But I just feel like it's a missed opportunity to not know some of these people more because I like some of them.
Yeah. Well, is it on Zoom, this class?
Yeah.
So you can DM people in the chat
Mhm.
on Zoom.
Yes. Yes.
Also, just mass message everyone in the chat on Zoom. Like, hey, I really want to keep in touch with everybody. Could everyone just drop their emails in the chat and I'll start an email thread? If you don't feel comfortable doing that, or if you want to ask the teacher, I'm sure she would be completely open to allowing everyone to share their
Yeah.
information with one another. So I highly encourage you to do so.
Well, thank you.
You're
Perhaps I will do that this week.
Sure. Absolutely. I went almost, I want to say 3/4 of the way through my last class when I found out that some of my classmates had a text thread. And I have an Android phone too, but they did. And now they message so often. It's incredible because the program is, it's not a cheap program. It's not super expensive for graduate programs as they stand, but there are some nightmare professors. And I'm so glad you just need this information. This is
Mhm.
information we all need to know. So I was so grateful to be a part of the group chat. And then after the first class of my current class, she put us in little groups to talk about the assignment. And I got paired with these 2 women who I wanted to talk to. And I was like, give me your emails. Give me your phone numbers. I'm going to text you right now. So I started it early, you know, and
Smart.
it's incredibly helpful because, sometimes someone says something really dumb in a workshop and you want to be like, did you hear what that person just said?
Yes.
Or or it's like, when is that assignment due? Or I'm confused. Or could you guys just look at my paper really quick? You need help. Everyone needs help. It's so much better to have friends. So I'm glad to hear that, you know, you're going to do that because I think it would almost be like you didn't take full advantage of the class if you didn't reach out to those people.
I agree. So I will add that to my goals. Make a
Yes.
friend in class.
Make a friend. Okay. Well, my goals for this week, I kind of have a big audacious goal that
Ooh.
it's not a weekly goal, but I want to finish the first draft of this book by April 1st. That is my goal. So I'm going to continue to march toward that goal. And I'm at 65,000 words right now. So I want to get to about 80. I don't love all, some of them are just whole cloth chapters pulled from old drafts put into the new. So I've got to fix those. But that's my goal, is to get this book done, at least the first draft, by April 1st.
That's
And
a month and a week.
yeah,
Wow. Good for you. I mean, I also have a big ugly goal of finishing my first draft by May 26th. So I don't know if that's going to happen. It feels unlikely, but I feel you on having a big, audacious goal to just loom over you
mm,
like the moon.
like the moon.
Yeah,
You need
controlling the waves of life.
the ocean of your body. Yeah, I feel like I can do it and it needs to be done. And that is what I'm going to focus on. So I don't really have a weekly goal this week. I'm going to continue to wake up at 5. I really love it. I feel like I am getting a jump on the world. So I've been
Yep.
waking up at 5, writing for an hour and a half or more. And then I go outside after I'm done writing before I wake up my kids when the sun is coming up, and I just like breathe in the cold air, shake my body around a little bit. And I just feel like everything else in the rest of the day is going to be fantastic. And today, on the way home from dropping my kids off from school, I saw a white crane on the side of the road. And I feel like that was
Ooh,
just a sign,
that's a good omen.
a good, auspicious sign that things are going well for me. Oh, I feel like I need to knock on wood. But that's my goal.
Amazing. I can't wait to hear more about it and more about your crane friend stalking you and your success. This was awesome. Good to see you as always, Chris Aaron. I feel motivated, ready to claw my way out of the coffin of unproductivity. We look forward to seeing you guys here next week. You know what to do with the podcast. Subscribe to it. Please rate it 5 stars. You can rate it 4 stars too, but anything lower than that, just scoot along. We don't need that here. And write to us. Chris Aaron, where can the people write to us?
officialpenpalspod@gmail.com. Please write to us. I love reading your emails.
Yeah. If you have something you want us to bring up, obviously we'd love to hear it. So we will see you same time, same place next week. Happy writing.
Happy writing.